Welcome to the Sedona Soul Sisters show, where we have down-to-earth discussions on spirituality, metaphysics, paranormal, and healing topics. The Sedona Soul Sisters are Roz Reynolds, Terry Ann Russell, and myself, Ivory Lanou. We have offices in Sedona, Arizona, where we see clients from all over the world. Today's topic is trust in the truth that lies within us. So we're talking
And
about following your own guidance. If you have questions or comments, let me open the chat room so that you can do that. If you have questions or comments, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can ask the question in the chat room. If you're watching this later on YouTube, as most people do, you can send us an email question or a suggestion for a topic. You'll see that down in the show description of the email to use. Well, this has been a big topic of late. We always set these topics a little in advance, and then clients will start pouring in on that exact topic if the reverse hasn't happened.
I don't know. I think it's, so many people right now feeling so many different emotions and reacting to events. And I really think the key word there is kind of reacting, like get a grip and tune in to what your gut feels and what you sense. Because otherwise, you're kind of at the mercy of whatever's going on. I mean, since I don't have television, I don't know what's going on there, but I know just from looking at headlines, you know, the headline comes across, and then immediately, there's all this chatter, all this Twitter, all this, from everyone, and I really feel like just kind of staying grounded within yourself and seeing how you're feeling. Like, do you feel it's true? Do you feel do you feel that these are things that you can even observe that they're happening? Because I feel like so much of what goes on right now is just everybody reacting instead of stopping and going, wait a minute, let me think about this.
It's almost like, remember, I used to work in corporate. So it was like if you were working with people and they were very negative, and then you started to get very negative about the situation. And meanwhile, it had nothing to do with you, but you came into work in a good mood. And I always was like, oh man, now I'm leaving and I'm so negative about what they were saying. And it's like, yeah, so being in that environment or being bombarded with all that information and not really tuning into your own guidance, I think it's a lot on people right now. I agree.
There's a whole lot of people that are just listening to what everybody else says and not taking some of this time we have to have less social life. Excuse me, with new steroid inhaler. Not taking the time we have a little bit more time alone to go inside and really see what you truly feel, what you truly believe. And about what Roz was saying a minute ago about how people are watching the news and then kind of flying off on emotions. If you're watching this show, I mean, odds are extremely high that you are pretty far on a spiritual journey, that you are hungry for information, that you're open to things, and you have some awareness of how energy works. So something to think about so that you can process this and see how it feels for you. These are words that were said by a friend of mine months ago, and I just love the way that she put it. She was like, we should stop worrying about what other people are thinking or who they're following or what they're believing, and step back and look at this as an energetic thing. Where you are on the energetic levels of how far you've raised your frequency determines what you're going to believe, who you're going to resonate with, and nothing and nobody is going to change that for somebody else. If they have not raised their frequency out of the third dimension, they're going to resonate with third dimension topics and ideas and people. End of story. And that's what we're seeing right now. So there's a whole lot of this going around the world. There's also a whole lot of people raising up out of that third dimension, which is why the basis of what's really happening here is the differences in people's frequency. So, follow your own guidance, see how that feels to you, but not just with what I just said, passing on my friend's words, but also with everything that you hear, everything that's going on around you. Don't get into the emotional sheep mode. You need to be able to come to a point where you trust your own instinct more than anything.
I think the thing I find most interesting, and this seems to be more geared for, celebrities and politicians and stuff like that, is the Twitter thing. Because, these off the cuff comments and remarks that people make, they're pretty, if you got a sense of humor, they're pretty hilarious, some of them. But the reality is, it's what you said, they only bear truth if it resonates that you think that's the truth. So they're kind of a waste of time, really.
Twitter is like a place where you see everyone's every little thought, and you're not meant to verbalize every little thought. That's not healthy or safe or kind to do. Like, people think things, but it's not polite or wise to blurt out every thought that goes through your head. Some of that you're meant to just have and process it or dismiss it. So when you're just putting out every little thing that goes through your head through the day, that can be dangerous and hurtful.
Yeah. So how do you determine, I get a lot of questions from clients and I know what my answer is, but so a lot of times they're like, how do you determine who is speaking to you? Like, is it your higher self? How do you know it's your higher self? How do you know it's not my ego talking? And my answer is usually, well, your ego is very fear-based, very wants to keep you small, safe, and so your ego speaks differently in your mind. Your higher self would never say, oh, you look horrible today. So trust that voice that you're hearing inside of your head, and try to discern where that's coming from. And I think the more that you do it, the more practice that you get listening to that time, spending that time in meditation and listening to that voice, the easier it is for you.
If somebody is feeling fear or anger, it's going to tremendously get in the way of hearing your own inner guidance. So what you're going to be hearing then is fear and anger. So, that's when you need to, if you're having thoughts like, I need to do some wild thing, I think that's a good time to go aside, do some meditation, ask your angels to come in and give you some guidance. Like, if you don't have a yes or a no, I think that's a good place to start. Like, I was just doing this with a student 2 days ago, like teaching them where you sit down and you do a little meditation and say, and this was with her angels because that's how she wanted to get it. Show me or let me feel what my yes is, and to feel that. And it's different for different people, and then a no to me is like nothing. Like for me, a yes is a huge rush of energy that goes through my entire body, and a no is just nothing. And a maybe is sort of this weird little wavy energy that comes in and out. So, or sort of. So that's a good place to go too, because that is your inner guidance. And sometimes when you can't get a clear answer just thinking, then you need to go get out of the way, stop thinking. Because sometimes I think that thinking, for a person who overthinks, which is definitely me, you have to get out of your own way to really hear your inner guidance, to not be just going with emotion.
I think that's a good point. Because we do, unfortunately, when we start going into the me, we do really distract ourselves and get ourselves ungrounded and at times I feel like we have a side to us that just goes out of its way to bring in all kinds of, I used to call that the logical and analytical side, because you just start bringing in all kinds of stuff. Well, no, because that can happen because of this, and what if, and um, I think if you just like get yourself back to the grounded um, side of yourself and really start to think about, okay, well, for me, it's always like, what am I feeling? Or in my case, like, too, what am I hearing? Because if the information is coming into me, I usually hear a frequency. It's a very high pitched frequency. Um, it's definitely coming from a place of extremely high um, and enlightened, I would say, energy fields and multi-dimensional, you know, um, information that's streaming in, for me, always comes in with that very high frequency. And I hear that first sometimes before I ever start processing anything else. So I know that they're, attached to each other. And a lot of people think that that is just a physical reaction, something my ear's doing. That's just not the case because I feel it in my solar plexus too.
Mhm.
So I think we have to be looking at all of the situations that we're dealing with when this stuff is coming in and what we're getting based on that. Um, Sometimes I find if I am not in a place of um, what I would describe as um, ready to ready to work, you know, in the place of being focused and being ready to receive. I think of myself kind of like an antenna, I guess. So, I think we have to look at that and we have to think about, okay, well, where are we? Where is this process? What accompanies when you're receiving this information? What is accompanying that? And I've had a lot of other people tell me they hear those high frequency sounds. I've had other people say, no, it's like a feeling of, some people feel a vibration with this. So I think it's very individualized. But
Yeah, I get a visceral feeling in my body too. And I do get that high pitch if it's really necessary for me to pay attention. It's like
yeah,
really high frequency. But for all of us too, people think it's easy because you're psychic, right? Oh, it must be so easy for you, but when it's your own stuff and you're put in that position, and we've all done it, right? And I always go back to moving here, and it was like, we were guided to move here, but I was like, well, how is this going to work? We don't even have any jobs. This is crazy. Like, how do you just, throw that all aside and go, okay, I'm going to jump in feet first and I'm going to do this, and trusting that guidance. And you have to be really adventurous to do that. And, if you're like my husband is very analytical, very like, this could happen, that could happen, all the bad things that can happen throughout, all of this. And so you have people that are very analytical too. So they're like, well, how do I do that? And, sometimes it is about taking that leap of faith and just diving feet first and going from there.
I think that visceral feeling that you're talking about for me is like I have a what we used to call the knowing. I get that gut feeling. I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And the the biggest event in my life that occurred like that was actually when I moved to Sedona. And I had all these reasons that I was certainly not going to move to Sedona. You know, I had children that were in school. I didn't want to disrupt them. I didn't want to, and I was constantly what I call being nagged, constantly being pushed, compelled to move here. And I was, you know, I have to say, I heard it, I felt it, I everything, and I was still shaking my head no and going no. And that went on for close to a year, and I was just okay. I'm going. And I know that was the right decision. I know that's what I was supposed to do, but that logical side definitely was talking, at that point and going, now wait a minute. Now this is, these are three children. They're not little. They have a life. You're moving them. You're disrupting your whole life. You're leaving the state. So it was pretty, I wouldn't say traumatic, but it was maybe dramatic is better, because I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I have to stop. There was no stopping. It just had to happen. And I'm sure that's what you experienced too. And I know you experienced something like that, Ivory, where you were just like going, okay, I'm doing it.
I've had so many things like that. Like when I was working in radio, and I loved working in radio. It was so much fun, very creative, which is good for me. But then I started getting this inner feeling like I need to do something that helps people in a more meaningful way. And I was strongly led to mental health. And as soon as I did an internship to get my foot in the door, and I just knew, like I knew to the core of my being, I just had that knowing that this is what I'm supposed to do. And I did do that for a long time. And I love that too. But then I had a feeling, I started getting a feeling again. I'm like, oh, there's, okay. And then then the angels started chiming in with their like, you can't do this, you have to go do your spiritual work full time now. No, I like what I'm doing. I like getting my regular paycheck and having paid days off, But no, they were determined. So here I am. But it comes back to this thing. This is something I'm sure all three of us are dealing with our clients, our students, is people having a hard time trusting their own messages, and they feel much more comfortable coming to a psychic and hearing what we have to say. But how many times, ladies, have you had a client sitting in front of you or a distance session, and you tell them what you get, and they're like, that's what I got. It's like, so people like the confirmation, but listen, hear this loud and clear. Like, how much confirmation do you need before you can trust your own inner guidance most of the time? Like Terry Ann said, even as a psychic, it doesn't matter. Like, there's times when you're so upset or the situation is too close to you, you're too in it to get a clear view. That's when I go to these two ladies and say, can you please take a look at this for me and just let me know. I just want to make sure that I'm not caught up in emotions instead of listening to my inner guidance. But most of the time, I just ask myself. I tune in and ask myself, or I ask my angels, what they think I need to do, or if something is in my best and highest good. That was very jazzy. Dun, 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 dun. That's
I like that.
music. Dun, dun, dun,
It's funky town.
Happy music.
How appropriate. I like it. So I think you have to come to that point, and Terry Ann brought this up too. We all have leap of faith moments, that trust moment where you're going to walk out on the limb and you're going to trust that that limb isn't going to break. So I'm going to challenge all of you to test this a little bit. So next time that you have a feeling about something, follow it. If it's possible and it's not too overly dramatic for you, follow it and see what happens. Start having some successes. When you get some successes under your belt that you follow your own inner guidance and it works out, that's how you build the trust. But if you always go to somebody else, we're not trying to talk ourselves out of business. There's plenty of people out there who are going to need psychic readings, and plenty of people who are in stuck places. So, we don't need to have people be addicted to psychic readings with us. That's not healthy. So try figuring it out yourself. Try and just tune into your own guidance. And so what does it feel like when you get strong guidance other than the physical feeling? For me, it's a repeated message that I feel, like a thought that I have. And sometimes it's impossible for me to tell whether it is coming from within or coming from my angelic team. And I don't even care anymore. Honestly, I don't see any point in sorting that out. We work together. So, you know, usually if I get the feeling, I get the feeling. So I do not act on very crazy things. I like to think on it. You know, if it's a big upset, if it's a big change, I think about it. I talk to my angels for a while to make sure that it's not me in an emotional place. You know, you don't make big changes when you're in an emotional place.
And even then, sometimes we still go kicking and screaming. We've all done that. It's like, oh my God, I don't, people really, I think for a lot of my clients, what I see is they like their comfort zone. Like you said, they don't want to give up that paycheck. They don't want to give up their 3 weeks vacation. I don't want to start over, so they have this comfort zone that they stay in, and they know that it's bringing them down. Like you said, they have the guidance. They know that it's bringing them down, and they know they need to do something different, but they're looking for that confirmation that it's going to be okay if they then step outside that little box.
I'm a big believer in, if you're at that place where you're getting inner messages that it's time for you to start working your mission or doing a specific different type of business, and you're having those concerns like Terry Ann mentioned about income and benefits and the security, why don't you do both for a while? Do both until you make enough money that you can leave that other work if you want to. Nobody says you have to. There's no have to out there. If you work in an office, you could do some things evenings, weekends. You know, think outside of the box on this. It's not black or white. There's all that gray area in between. And don't feel like you have to do either or. Most people need to keep some sort of form of income as they're building their next business, you know, to make sure your bills are paid and that you aren't so stuck in stress about money that you can't do a good job or build a business.
I think the other thing too is really um, when it starts to impact your ability to be in a peaceful state, because you're supposed to be doing blank, whatever that is. Because I mean, for many years I had a quote unquote regular career, um, and enjoyed what I did, just like very happy. Um, but the reality was I had this constant pushing to go, and I mean, in my case, it was like, pack up and leave. that's that's an experience that it's very hard to explain to someone else, that you have this compulsion. And in my case, of course, I'm hearing input like, you need to go there, it's time for you to go now. I'm like, oh.
I can think of another strong inner message that's kind of funny, that before I even moved to Sedona, now I lived in this area since 75, so I didn't go very far, but before I moved to Sedona, I was thinking of starting a business, and I knew I'd want people to go into the business with me. I didn't know anybody in Sedona to go into business with me, so I was compelled. I just had this inner voice every time I drove by this plaza that I just felt like I had to drive in there, and I saw a for rent sign in this front suite, and I was stalking that suite for over a year before we moved into that suite. That was the initial Sedona Soul Sisters suite in the same plaza we're in now. So there's something about that plaza that just called out to me. I'd never been in there. I never had any it's a professional plaza. I didn't live here, so I had no reason, but I just knew that was going to be our place. We're not in the same suite, but we're in the same plaza now. But I recall that, like, showing that to the ladies, and Roz and our initial partners are like, I don't know. And I said, you need to step inside. And when we went inside, they were like, oh, I like the energy in here. Oh, this feels good. So I could feel that, like, through the walls, like it was calling to me as I drove by on the highway. And there's no logical reason for me to have been compelled to go to that building, but I kept being pulled and pulled and pulled to that suite. So I think it's so funny we ended up in that suite a year later.
Well, I find that interesting too, but I've always preferred this area of Sedona to any of
That's
the others
hectic.
as far as energetic. And the other offices I had, one was a little further, west, one was a little further east, and where we are now was kind of centrally located to that. So this whole area just has a really good energetic field, and I think that leads a lot to it. So that's something for people to think about too, is to see how you're feeling about what you're thinking about doing, but also where you're feeling called to go. Because I know in the case of, Terry Ann, when I first met you, you were, you were just like loving being in Sedona, how good it felt. And you were still transferring, or going back
Mhm.
and forth. And I think when you go back down to where you have been, and then you come back to where your heart and your soul is, that's definitely an amazing sensation.
Yeah.
And you can't deny that. Talking about trust your feelings, I mean,
Mhm.
you can't deny that.
But the problem,
No, and I came to Sedona in 2009. I think I was pregnant with Sophia. So for the first time I had visited Sedona was in 2009 when I was pregnant. And I knew then that I was going to live here. Didn't know how, what, when, or where. And obviously, I didn't jump right in and go to Sedona. We ended up down in Gilbert. But, every time we came back, and then Tim and I came together, and there would be like this remembrance that our souls had been here before, the two of us together. And so the more he started to feel that too, it was like, wow, we really do need to be here. But he is the more analytical one of the two of us. He keeps me from jumping off that cliff,
on a
face
daily
first
basis,
on a daily basis.
all of us. I
Yeah, but it
think
is about trusting that guidance, and whether you're, guided. Not everybody understands, like when they visit someplace, that feeling that comes in. And a lot of people go like to Hawaii or Florida and like, oh, I love it here. I feel like I've been here before, And so same thing like California. I have a lot of clients in California and they're like, they hate California. And they come to Sedona and they're like, oh my gosh, what a difference between California and Sedona, And I'm like, that's like night and day, my God. So people can feel the difference. A lot of people are opening to feeling that. And I think the more that everybody is awakening, that feeling is coming in more and more. And that's where that guidance is coming in.
but here's how our heads will get in the way. So let's say, like, I was living down in Cave Creek for a few years, and I finally was at a position when it was me, my daughter's grown woman with her own family. I wasn't in a relationship. I had nothing holding me to that area at all. And I thought, this is my chance. I'm moving to Sedona. I was really pulled to do it. I could have said, I don't know anybody there, because I did know people, and they died. Literally, two of them died within 6 months of me moving here, and another one and her boyfriend moved to Colorado. Like, so I knew four people really well. They all moved just before I moved up here. They all are died. So I didn't know anybody up here in Sedona. I didn't have a place to work. I didn't know where I was going to live. I I had some money to start this new life, but it was just so odd. I could have said, that doesn't make any sense. You should wait till you have a firm place, like till you met some people, till you have a life to move to. But I couldn't do it. I felt like I had to do it right then, or I was going to miss my opportunity that I'd wanted to move here since the first time I was here in '75. I was a kid. I was a teenager. And I felt like what Terry Ann said, like I just felt so good. And I didn't know that it was the energy in Sedona. Now I do, and as an adult, as I was working my spiritual journey, I'd come there and I'd feel the frequency for me would just lift me right up, and I'd feel like giddy, absolutely giddy. I felt so good. Now I get that at Red Rock Crossing, my giddy energy place. But we can talk ourselves right out of the things that our inner guidance is telling us to do by getting too much into the logic. So sometimes we have to shut our brain down and say, despite all of that, like Terry Ann was saying with her husband, saying all the things that could go wrong, but what about all the things that could go right if you follow your inner guidance? I got to meet these wonderful ladies. I got to meet so many wonderful people in this area and have this huge circle of friends here, and get to be in beautiful Sedona, and just so many wonderful things have fallen into place since I moved here. Has it all been easy? No. Has it all been a bed of roses? No. It hasn't. Nothing is when you're making big changes in your life. But I think it still was absolutely the right thing to do. And hi, Barb. I'm so glad you can join us.
Nice. Good to see you.
We don't care how you come to our show. Barb has not been feeling good, and this is as much energy as she has right now. We don't care. We're just glad to see her beautiful face.
Yeah. It's a good thing.
So what else have you ladies had that inner guidance or inner feeling about?
You know, I mean, I look back over the course of my life, I've done some unconventional things, and all of them happened because I had that feeling. I just knew. I can remember, when I started having my family, um, you know, most people don't necessarily have 4 kids in 5 years. That certainly was sent. I mean, I didn't plan that, certainly, but I knew immediately when I found out that I was going to have my first child that I needed to stay away from traditional medicine. I wanted to have him at home with midwives. I did not want to be dealing with everything that they wanted to do. I just knew it wouldn't work for me because regular medicine stuff doesn't work right on me and never has. And, I had a lot of people who freaked out, one being, my parents, like, I can't believe you're going to have your children at home. What are you thinking? A lot of my friends. I mean, I did not have a lot of support in that decision, but I knew. I could just feel like if I get into a hospital, this is not going to work out good for me or the baby. So, that's one instance where I can remember having this definite just hit me like I gotta I gotta go with the old methods, the midwifery and how those things are done. I can remember, at different times in my life, um, planning a move. I knew I was going to move. Well, of course, I have the weird story of the owls and the visiting, but I wouldn't know. I would just feel like, okay, we're going to move. I can feel it. I don't know why. There was no reason for me to be thinking I was moving at the time. And that's exactly what you were talking about, Terry Ann, although in your case, you felt the compulsion to move. I didn't even feel the compulsion or hear anything. It was just like, okay, I better start packing. And I started packing, like a month before we were going to move. So I think if you're listening and you trust what you have received, and you just have that knowing feeling like, okay, this is what I need to do. You got to roll with that. And there have been lots, I mean, I could go on and on, but there have been lots of times in my lives in my lives, in my life when I realized,
Lives.
yeah, realized, okay, it's time to do this, and just started on it, whatever it was. So I think it's really about how much our comfort level with trust, with
And
realizing. I
it's
know
not
I'm,
all, go ahead. It's not
and
all about being guided to do something. It also can be guided to not do something or to avoid a person. And I think those are the ways that our logic mind says, there's no reason for me to not do that. There's no reason for me not to trust that person. And yet you get a strong inner feeling. I think that's probably been the bane of my lifetime. This particular lifetime has been not wanting to listen to that because I'm very logical and my brain is like, there's not been any reason for me to not trust that person or to stay away
you
from
are
that
very
person.
logical.
And I've learned the hard way, like when you get that message, don't worry about the logical part of it. Just stay away. You know, don't do it. Don't go there. Don't hang out with that person. Don't pursue any kind of interaction with that person or relationship in any way, friendship, lovers, whatever it is. Trust your inner voice and do it before something pulls you in further where your inner voice can't be heard as well. Because I've certainly had that happen too, where you're so mired in emotions, you can't hear your inner voice anymore. Then you feel really stuck.
I think that happens to a lot of people. A lot of the young girls that have come in to see me would always say, I knew I shouldn't have went out with him. There was just something, I knew I shouldn't have dated him, but I did it anyway.
Yeah.
And then I was sorry, and now my life is, utter chaos. And I'm like, that's, something guiding you within you, telling you, avoid that. And you have to trust that, and we're groomed to not trust that. We're groomed to look outside of ourselves, and like you said, why would I not trust them? And they've given me no reason. But I always say, even like with Anthony, he knows the bigger picture, so he sees the whole thing, how it looks, and he gives me little bits and pieces to digest what I can handle a little bit at a time. So we don't always know the bigger picture, but we do know that our inner self, our inner guidance, that GPS that we have, can sometimes be marred by that logical side. Luckily, I don't have a logical side, so.
You don't have to worry about that getting in the way.
But I have a husband who has a logical side, which also that makes it difficult. Yeah. So, but he has learned. I mean, he's learned tremendously, and I think he's a good example of talking about people that I'm showing him this guidance. We need to move here. We need to do this, and everything played out smooth in the beginning. Everything just rolled perfectly, and we moved here. I think for him, it was important for him to see that. So, he was starting to learn how to trust that, yeah, she knows what she's talking about, and I think this will be a good thing, and we just have to do it. And so, like, we're going to have more movement coming. He's really, I mean, he jumped right on board. I don't know how it's going to work. I was the more logical, like, he's never going to go for this. This is crazy. And he did. But it's interesting now to see his difference in his perspective, how he thinks about it today versus how he thought about it 3 years ago.
And also something to think about, just because of my background in mental health, I know that when you're getting those feelings and you can't put a logical explanation on, like a feeling to not trust a person, let's just use that as an example. Most people don't know that your brain registers things in mere seconds that you can't even process that it's registering it. One of those things is when you feel fear and you're not sure why, just go with it, because there's a lot of studies done, and if you're interested, we can do a show about that sometime. But and if you want to know the name of the book, I can tell you. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's about fear and how women are almost trained by our upbringing to ignore our feelings of fear, and yet our brain has all these years of development to detect reasons to be fearful, before we even know it. So the same is true of micro expressions on a person's face. A lot of people who are psychic are really good at reading micro expressions too, and those are the fleeting expressions that a person has to go across their face that they're trying to hide an emotion or a feeling, but it leaks through, like it's just a brief second, but your brain registers these things. So part of what you're experiencing when you have those feelings that you can't explain is also a very easily explained, like scientific reason behind it, as well as your intuitive feeling that you're getting. So there's those two things combined, reason to pay attention to what your brain is telling you, because it's already come up with a reasonable explanation that you just don't have. You didn't get the memo yet, but you're getting the headline. Run.
That's how it should come up, right? In your psychic vision, run.
Go do a U-turn, run as fast as you can. It's just, here's an example, like women who, this book was talking about a study done about like women walking down a street and they're by themselves and they're kind of a shady neighborhood. And a man starts to walk on the other side of the street and they feel nervous about that. Then the man crosses to their side of the street and they're still not walking faster, running, making a phone call. They're just waiting till they wait till the person runs toward them before they allow themselves to act on what their brain is telling them. And that's kind of scary. So, that's actually happening to us in a less dramatic way often when we're getting these strong messages like, oh, I shouldn't trust that person. So all of you who come to us or to other psychics and you ask questions like, should I trust this person? For me, I'll almost always get a strong, oh gosh, no. And they're like, I knew it. Yeah. So you already knew that. So once again, why can't you just trust yourself? Don't trust that person. Your instincts are telling you already. We're happy to reiterate it for you, but at some point, again, you're stepping off that limb and trusting yourself. Don't worry about whether it's your intuition or your angels, or if it's not telling you to do negative things. Your angels and your self-guidance will not tell you to step off a bridge. It's not going to tell you to burn your life down to the ground. It will sometimes tell you to turn your life inside out and upside down, step by step. That's happened to me twice, and it was definitely all tied into huge spiritual growth. Like it had to be done, and I hated it. I didn't want to do it, but it had to be done.
I think that's important for people to know, is we are also just human, right? We are, just because we're psychic, doesn't mean anything. We are still human. We still have human emotions that get involved in our decisions. And we have other people, like Roz said, her children. I have a husband that we have to take into consideration when we receive this guidance as well. So it's just important to know that, it is just, I think it's a balancing act, learning to trust that inner voice and coming to a common ground. And as you trust that voice more and you get in touch with listening to it more, it becomes stronger. It's like anything else that you do with practice. The more you meditate and connect with your higher self, the easier it is for you to hear those messages. And probably most messages won't be like, move to Sedona now, so they could, but
But it is, I'm glad you brought that up, because I do think it is like working out a muscle. So your inner voice, your own intuition is a muscle. Everybody has it. If you work it out, it gets stronger. If you don't, it stays pretty much the way it is. But it's also, I think, a little bit of a self-esteem issue around trusting your intuition, because people who will not come to a place where they trust their own inner voice, they always have to go to somebody else, whether it's family, friends, a counselor, a psychic. They're not trusting themselves. And so they think that their intuition isn't as good as somebody else's. So if that's the issue for you, if that's why you're finding it hard to trust your own intuition, then I think, maybe you should consider exercising that muscle. You know, you can do it through guidance with one of us. You can do it with a book that walks you through it. So, you know, it'll be a little done differently. Everybody's got their own kind of exercises and style, but you can work it and make it better than it is wherever yours is now, and get it to a level that does allow you to feel confidence that your intuition, your inner guidance is good enough that you can trust it unless you're in a really serious situation where you're stuck in the emotions, because it's always about the emotions.
I think one important thing to realize is that, you know, I mean, when we tell these events that have gone on with us and occasionally with clients, it's always important to realize that everything doesn't turn out exactly as you expected, but it still turns out well. It still usually turns out good if you've based your decision on what you felt coming through to you. Um, you know, because it, the world is not standing still while we're making our decision about what we're going to do. Um, Especially right now. I mean, I feel like things are moving at a pace right now that is just unbelievable. Just trying to keep up with what goes on every day would be enough to make me cuckoo, you know, which is part of the reason I stopped watching the news years ago. I mean, I haven't had a television for years, mainly just because I can't, if I'm having to process all of this constant trauma, this cacophony of, you know, this country's doing this country's doing this, and all of that, it just impacts too much my ability to keep my frequency tuned
Mm-hmm.
and remain tuned, you know, on what I need to be able to provide people and do. So I think we have to kind of be realistic, you know, in our expectations too. We know that it's going to turn out okay. We know it. And we have to allow that to take whatever format in addition to what we envisioned and what we saw, whatever format it needs to take.
Sometimes people will say things like, well, I trusted my intuition and this happened. You know, I had a firm vision in my mind of how things were going to go, and I was guided to do it. And then this happened. Well, consider, because I've had this happen, I had a firm vision about how my move to Sedona was going to go and where I was going to work. But there were some things about where I had my heart set on working and did work for a while that I didn't know and became readily apparent. And it was a horrible place for me to be. It was just dark, dense energy, and just absolutely damaging to my energetic field. And I had to get out of there. So yeah, I had a firm vision, and I did work there, and then we opened our office in the plaza, and that's when things felt like they were really more falling into place. Like that's what was supposed to happen all along. I just didn't have that in my vision. So take it, just think about maybe your initial vision wasn't in your best and highest good. That was what your logic told you to do, or your personal desire, versus your intuition or your inner voice. And so then it had to be recourse to what it was actually in your best and highest good.
I think if too, you know, if you are a person who does, you know, not everyone does prayer and affirmation. That's my thing, but everybody has some format of tuning, of tuning in and of communicating with your guidance. I feel like it's really important to always add at the end of these things where you realize suddenly, okay, I have to do this, and be guiding me while I'm in this process and show me what it is. And I'm saying that a lot all the time, you know, like, okay, show me what it is that I need to be doing here, or I need to know here. It's not like it's instantaneous and flies into my head. I'm asking for help. I'm asking for guidance too. When they start nagging me, of course, well, yeah, That's a different thing. Then I have been known to have to be dragged by my hair screaming, but um, I feel like, that is me dealing with my will. I have a very strong will, you know. Sometimes my will interferes with my ability to receive what I'm supposed to be getting. So that requires constant management.
I think
And I
that's the
have to,
first thing I said to you is it took me a few weeks to make my appointment with you when I first was guided to you. And I was like, you can't make me go.
I'm thinking, well, yeah. I said that.
Well, your logical side was telling you, they're going to think I'm crazy. But no.
Yeah,
True.
very true. But something I used when I first started out, which really helped me too, was every morning I would ask my mind, my body, and my soul, what do you need today? And I would try to honor that. And so if it was water or rest, I would try to make time for myself to do those things. Exercise, no, I don't want to hear that one. So, you can also do something as simple like that, or pull just some very simple angel cards that have simple words on it for you to pull every morning. I would do that also. And it would say rest or read or go within, so simple things that you can do that you're being guided, even though you're not hearing direct guidance.
I think that's a really good point.
And before you pull a card, ask the question, what is in my best and highest good today? Pull the card. I'm so glad you brought that up, not the card thing, that's good too, but also about listening to your inner voice about what you need on a daily basis. That's something I think for me has increased even more during this time of isolating for so long, is it tells me like, you need more rest, or you need to eat more vegetables. Like I'll hear that like from within myself, like, you're not drinking enough water, it'll come out of the blue. And I think that's part of it too. It's not like I'm thinking, what do I need? Why, what's wrong? It'll be just boom, you need to drink more water. Like that's a good sign that you're getting a self-intuitive hit for yourself. It's out of the blue. I mean, yes, it could be your angels too. Honestly, it's very hard to determine between them. So don't worry about it. You're getting guidance in your own, and you're supposed to follow it. And sometimes it's annoying. Won't they tell you to? They do for me. I'll keep getting the same message again and again until I just do it. It's just like with the angels. They're like, how hard-headed?
Like I said, especially when it's like exercise, be quiet.
Yes, I'm hearing that. Like, you need to walk every day, and I'm like, oh God. Okay.
I go, shut up.
I know they're right. I know they're right. Anything?
Well, I think the most important thing, if people are going to take one major, thing out of this, is, be open to receive. Be open to tune in to what you're hearing, seeing, feeling. I mean, I find the other five senses are definitely functioning with my sixth sense. And, we all have a sixth sense. So, I mean, that's a great part of this antenna that I think I have, where it's bringing in information, even when I'm not, even, I may have been asking, I may have been not even consciously thinking about it, one extreme or the other, but still, I want to be open. I want to remain open to hear what it is that's coming and feel what it is that I then know that I know. And if you can kind of stay in that state, you're likely to be able to just tune in on it.
I think that's well put. Do you have anything you want to add, Carrie Ann?
No, that's wonderful.
I agree. Good wrap up, Roz. Thank you for watching the Sedona Soul Sisters show. If you'd like more information about us or our services, please visit our website, sedonasoulsisters.com. Tune in next week when the topic is spirit communication. I don't know about the other ladies, but I'm planning to talk a bit more about how you can communicate with your deceased loved ones, not about specifically how we do it. But in the meantime, we hope you have an enlightening week.
Bye.